Arctic Frost was the vehicle by which FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. Contrary to what Smith has said publicly, this was clearly a fishing expedition. If this had happened to Democrats, they'd be as rightly outraged as we are outraged. We're making these records public in the interest of transparency and so that the American people can draw their own conclusions.
And that's Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley releasing additional FBI files revealing hundreds more Republican groups and individuals were targeted in a fishing expedition brought by special counsel Jack Smith. They tracked all the phone calls of sitting elected officials as well as Republican groups. The subpoenas covered 34 people and 163 businesses, including financial institutions, which sought information on more than 430 individuals and organizations tied to Republicans. Even Truth Social and Devin Nunes was tracked. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan is calling on special counsel Jack Smith to first testify behind closed doors before any public hearing takes place. Smith's attorney says this in response: Jack is happy to discuss his work as special counsel and answer any questions at a public hearing. We hope the House and Senate Judiciary Committees will agree so that the American people can hear directly from him. Name the time and place. Jack will be there. Joining me now is the man himself. He is Ohio Congressman and the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for being here.
Good to be with
First, let's get through this sort of, this little trick that they're doing by trying to say that a public hearing is going to yield more information than a private behind closed doors meeting. Your reaction?
Well, we may want a public hearing. I mean, typically special counsels do come for public hearing, but we want him to come first for a deposition because we've already deposed several of his lieutenants as part of the special counsel's investigation. Mr. Wyndham and Mr. Bratt each took the Fifth Amendment 71 and 73 times respectively. They refused to answer questions like, was this a political operation designed to go after President Trump and others? Take the Fifth. We ask him, how many other members of Congress, how many other officials did you surveil? Did you get their phone records on? I take the Fifth. So we want to know what Jack Smith's going to do when we ask him those questions and a host of others. And the only thing, when you look at this whole investigation, this is like so many of the investigations we've done, Maria. The only thing we get wrong when we start these investigations is it's always worse than we thought. And this one was certainly the case because, I mean, this was so expansive, so broad. Senator Grassley is exactly right. This was a complete fishing expedition. They got Dan Scavino's bank records. Dan Scavino was the social media guy who ran all of President Trump's social media accounts, talented guy. They went after his bank records, for goodness sake. That's how ridiculous this entire thing was. And so we want Jack Smith in a deposition format when he's under oath. Will he answer our questions there? That's what we want first before we think about a public hearing.
Well, I mean, this is even a lot worse than just being ridiculous. I mean, this is bordering on criminal. For example, on the Devin Nunes and Trump's, Truth Social Corporation, Trump Media and Technology, we've got this tweet from Devin Nunes, and I want to know what Trump Media Telecom company has to do with January 6th. What does Truth Social and Devin Nunes have to do with January 6th? Why was he among those tracked?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I want to know why, like, almost all these subpoenas were just administrative subpoenas as well. There wasn't some judge saying, oh, there's probable cause to think Dan Scavino is somehow involved in criminal activity, so you can go get his bank records. I mean, there was none of that. This was just coming from Jack Smith, just subpoenas to get this information, and it looks like all these entities just turned it over. No one pushed back and said, wait a minute, do you really need all this? So, yeah, I mean, I think this is why and remember the background here. This is the same Jack Smith who got the gag order on President Trump. This is the same Jack Smith who raided President Trump's home. This is the same Jack Smith where one of his lieutenants tried to pressure a defendant's counsel. We know that Stanley Woodward testified and said, they come up to me and said, oh, we didn't know you were a Trump guy. we thought you were interested in this federal judge position, trying to intimidate a defendant's counsel in the middle of this investigation. And of course, this is the same Jack Smith where a couple of his lieutenants who came to work for the special counsel were the same individuals who took Scott Perry's phone, took the phone of a sitting member of Congress, and then, of course, we learned they're spying on 8 United States senators, and then these 180 subpoenas to all these individuals, all these Republican entities on this amazing fishing expedition. That's what Jack Smith did. That's why we want him for a deposition.
Well, what are the repercussions for these telecom companies? Because Ted Cruz is also tweeting and posting out that the judge went to AT&T and told AT&T, we want all the phone calls of Ted Cruz, and do not tell him you are giving this information to us. They specifically said, don't tell him. And according to Ted Cruz, AT&T didn't. I mean, is that normal protocol that a major telecom company is going to give up everybody's information on their phone, even if, including a sitting senator?
Yeah, this is how the FBI operated. Yeah, this is how the FBI operated, and they don't tell the person who's being targeted until after the fact, until months or years later. They tell them, okay, now we're allowed to tell you that we had to turn this stuff over to the FBI because they came asking for this information, came requiring this information. I think that's something, frankly, we need to look at. But yeah, this is how bad it was. This is how pervasive it was. And again, it's why I think it's important we dig into all this. And frankly, I think it's important that when we find individuals who are part of this entire broader operation of weaponizing the government against your political foes, against your political, enemies, I think it's why we hold them accountable. It's why last week, in a related issue, we referred former CIA Director John Brennan to the Justice Department because we think he lied under oath. We think it's clear. And we don't do many of these referrals. We only do it when the facts clearly warrant that. But we think he definitely lied to Congress. I always tell folks, you're not supposed to lie, but you're definitely not supposed to lie when you're under oath talking to Congress. And it looks like John Brennan did. So I think in this broader issue, it's why it's important people are held to account so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen in the future.
Well, by the way, Bill Haggerty told me the same thing, that the telecom company gave everything up and they didn't even tell him. So I'd like to see if there will be follow-up on any of these telecom companies. But you mentioned John Brennan, and that's where I was going next. Mr. Chairman, John Brennan and this referral, we remember during the Russia collusion hoax how John Brennan kept attacking President Trump. And we're wondering if, in fact, there was a conspiracy over a 10-year period, because it started with the Russia collusion story, but then it went on impeachment and the Hunter Biden laptop, and then the raid at Mar-a-Lago, which I'm told that they were looking for this report that I have right here, which is the Intelligence Committee's report on what the FBI and the CIA did during the Russia collusion. So it went on and on. Was there a conspiracy, and do you expect new charges against the likes of John Brennan or Jim Comey regarding conspiracy?
Yeah, there very well might have been, and I think the Justice Department is looking into this. I certainly hope they are, because that's what it's starting to look like. And with John Brennan specifically, he told us when we deposed him last Congress, he told us that the dossier, he had nothing to do with the dossier back in 2016. He said he didn't want it included in the intelligence community assessment. But then ODNI Director Tulsi Gabbard this summer released a report, declassified a report from the House Intelligence Committee from several years ago. And in that report, it says exactly the opposite. In fact, it said John Brennan put in writing, include the dossier in the intelligence community assessment. And they relate a story where a CIA official confronts Mr. Brennan and says, Director, this dossier just doesn't stand up. There's no underlying intelligence to support it. It's ridiculous. And John Brennan's response was, yeah, but doesn't it ring true? I think fully displaying his motivation, his motive, and that the fact that he wanted to go after President Trump. And so it was included in the intelligence community report. Total lie what he told us, and that's why we referred him. And here's the irony, Maria. We were actually deposing Mr. Brennan on a different issue. We were deposing him on the 51 former Intel officials who signed on to the letter that said the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russian information operation, which was completely bogus. So John Brennan has a pattern, I believe, of lying to the country and lying to Congress. And that's why we referred him. And you're exactly right. That's when it all started. 2016, taking the dossier, using that as the basis and the predicate to establish the Mueller investigation, which then next thing it was impeachment, and then it was Jack Smith and raid in his home, and on it goes. So that's where it began, and that's where I think you start to put together this idea that there may in fact have been a conspiracy, and let's see if the Justice Department goes that direction.
Well, I mean, the rot is so deep, it's unbelievable, Mr. Chairman. We've got new reports revealing that the Biden FBI used a security clearance process to potentially retaliate against a whistleblower, even tried to interrogate his wife while denying her repeated requests for an attorney, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So the Democrats are always talking about all these whistleblowers, but when it's a whistleblower on the other side, well, then they want to retaliate. The House Oversight Committee also releasing its report on the investigation into Joe Biden's use of the autopen and the cover-up of his mental decline. The committee says any actions, whether it's pardons, whether it's, documents, anything used by that autopen should be null and void. Your reaction?
Yes. Well, first to the whistleblower, that was the pattern with the Wray FBI and the Biden Justice Department. Any whistleblower came forward, there was retaliation, and where they went was the security clearance, which is what an FBI agent has to have. And so they did it with Marcus Allen, they did it with Garrett O'Boyle, now they're doing it with this individual. And this one was even worse because they tried to intimidate his wife and harass his wife. They said, we want to interview your wife, and she said, well, I'd like to have counsel there. They said, no, we want to talk to you now. I mean, that's how bad it was. To the autopen issue, I mean, the whole country gets this. We saw this in the debate. Joe Biden was not up to the job. The whole country saw it firsthand in that debate. Particularly, I always remember when he said he was an 8 handicap on the golf course, and President Trump said, there's no way. I've seen your swing, for goodness sake. He couldn't get off the bicycle, but he could, somehow he's an 8 handicap. So the country saw he wasn't up to the job. And then, of course, any actions he took after that relative to pardons or commutations or executive orders, I think, are suspect, particularly when Joe Biden said, oh, we had a process in place, certain protocols had to be followed before the autopen was used. But Mr. Comer's investigation shows just the opposite. There really wasn't a process. So I do think all that's suspect. We'll see how the Justice Department handles that issue.
Now, real quick before you go, do you want to see any accountability for Judge Boasberg? I keep seeing Judge Boasberg's name come up in terms of authorizing some of this, Congressman.
Yeah, no, I think that's something we can look into. Of course, Judge Boasberg's also the individual who was at the heart of the matter with Mr. Brejo Garcia earlier this year, the migrant who that was on part of this whole operation with Homeland Security and Tom Homan and everything else. So, yeah, I do think that's something we can look into. And of course, we passed legislation on these injunctions, which we think is helpful. We passed it through the House. It's now in the Senate. So we're looking at that issue as well, as we move forward.
I guess he was the one who gave a slap on the wrist to the FBI agent who really was not truthful about Carter Page. So I remember his name in the Russia collusion story as well.
No,
it's interesting to see the same characters keep coming back. Mr. Chairman, you're doing very important work, and we're watching it. We so appreciate your time this morning, sir.
Thank you, Maria. Take care.